Picture this. You're sitting across from a coworker at lunch, someone you know for a fact earns less than you, has a simpler job than you, and honestly, you've quietly wondered more than once how they even got hired. And then they casually mention they just hit $30,000 in savings. Meanwhile, you've got a master's degree, a salary that should be more than enough, and a bank account that somehow looks exactly the same as it did 3 years ago. You close the app, you order the cheaper thing on the menu, and you spend the rest of the afternoon wondering what is actually going on. If that scenario hit a little too close to home, stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you is going to reframe everything you thought you knew about intelligence and money. My name is Sachi, and I spend way too much time thinking about why capable, educated, hardworking people end up financially stuck, while others who seem to be working with less somehow pull ahead. If you've ever looked at your income and your savings account and felt like the math just doesn't add up, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up making things click for you. Now, before we get into the real reason smart people stay broke, let me ask you something. When you think about financial failure, what kind of person do you picture? Probably not someone with a college degree. Probably not someone with a good job, a full calendar, and the ability to hold their own in a conversation about literally anything. And yet, some of the most financially stuck people I've ever come across are exactly that person. Educated, capable, aware, and completely unable to get ahead. So what's happening here? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Intelligence doesn't protect you from bad financial outcomes. In fact, in some very specific ways, it makes things worse. And understanding exactly why is the difference between staying stuck and finally starting to move. Let's start with the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Smart people are better at justifying bad decisions. Think about that for a second. The same mental horsepower that helps you solve complex problems, ace interviews, and win arguments also makes you incredibly good at constructing reasons why the financially questionable thing you're about to do actually makes total sense. Psychologists call this motivated reasoning, and high-intelligence individuals are measurably better at it than everyone else. You're not making emotional decisions. You're making emotional decisions with a very convincing intellectual wrapper around them. You don't impulse buy. You research the purchase for 2 weeks and then conclude it was the logical choice. You don't avoid investing because you're lazy. You avoid it because you've read enough to know the risks, and you're waiting for the right moment, which somehow never arrives. You don't overspend on your lifestyle because you're careless. You've calculated that your income justifies it, and you deserve to enjoy what you've worked for. Every single one of those thoughts sounds reasonable. That's the problem. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is the part that most financial content completely skips over. The second reason smart people stay broke has nothing to do with bad decisions. It has to do with which game they think they're playing. Most high achievers are operating from a deeply ingrained belief that the path to wealth runs through performance. Study harder. Get the better degree. Land the higher paying job. Earn the promotion. The logic is clean. More input equals more output. And for a long time, it works. You study hard and you get the grades. You work hard and you get the raise. The performance to reward loop gets reinforced over and over again until it becomes the only model you know. The problem is that wealth doesn't work that way. Wealth isn't built through performance. It's built through systems. And those are two completely different games with two completely different rule sets. The performance game rewards effort. The wealth game rewards what your money does while you're not looking. And if nobody ever handed you that distinction, if you grew up watching the people around you work hard and still struggle, there's a very good chance you've been playing the wrong game your entire adult life without even knowing it. Here's a way to think about it. Imagine two people. The first person is exceptional at their job. They get promoted regularly. They're respected. They're always busy, and their salary reflects it. But every raise gets absorbed into a slightly upgraded lifestyle. Better apartment, newer car, nicer restaurants. The spending expands to match the income almost automatically, and savings stays thin because there's always something reasonable to spend money on. This person is winning the performance game. They are losing the wealth game. The second person earns less, significantly less. But somewhere along the way, they learned one thing the first person didn't: that the point isn't how much comes in, it's how much stays in and goes to work. They save a fixed amount before they do anything else. They invest consistently in boring, unglamorous index funds. They drive a car that gets them from point A to point B without requiring a monthly payment that rivals rent. 10 years later, their net worth quietly dwarfs the first person's. Not because they were smarter, not because they worked harder, because they understood which game actually builds wealth. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. I need to save more and spend less. And if that's what you're taking from this so far, I want to push back a little. Because the spending isn't really the problem. The spending is a symptom. The actual problem runs deeper, and it has a name. It's called lifestyle calibration. And it is the single most effective wealth trap ever created for high earners. Here's how it works. Every time your income goes up, your brain recalibrates what feels normal. The apartment that felt luxurious at 25 feels cramped at 32. The car that felt like an upgrade at 28 feels embarrassing at 35. The vacations that used to feel indulgent start feeling like the baseline. None of this feels like overspending, because at every stage, you are spending exactly what someone at your income level is supposed to spend. You're just keeping up with the version of yourself you think you should be by now. And here's the thing that makes lifestyle calibration so dangerous for smart people specifically. You can always justify it. Your job is stressful. You've earned this. You're investing in your well-being. You work hard and life is short. None of that is wrong, exactly. But all of it is quietly preventing you from building any real financial runway. The people who break out of this trap don't do it by becoming misers. They do it by making one mental shift that changes everything. They stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "What is this actually costing me?" Those two questions sound similar, but they produce completely different answers. Can I afford this is a cash flow question. It asks whether the money is there. And if you're a high earner, the answer is almost always yes. What is this costing me is an opportunity question. It asks what that money could become if it went somewhere else instead. That $600 a month car payment isn't $600. Over 5 years, invested at a modest return, it's closer to $45,000. That apartment upgrade that costs $400 more per month isn't $400. Over a decade, it's the difference between a fully funded investment account and one that's still trying to find its footing. The numbers don't lie. But you have to be willing to run them. And most people aren't, because the answer is uncomfortable. But here's where most people mess this up. And I see this constantly with exactly the type of person I'm describing. They hear all of this. They feel the logic of it. And then they go home and do nothing. Not because they don't care, not because they don't understand, but because of the third reason smart people stay broke, and it might be the most insidious one of all. Analysis paralysis. When you're intelligent, you know enough to know what you don't know. You've read that index funds are good, but you've also read about timing the market. You know you should have an emergency fund, but you're not sure how much is the right amount. You understand the value of investing early, but you want to make sure you're doing it optimally before you start. So you keep researching, you keep refining your plan. You buy the book, You watch the videos, you open the brokerage account, and then leave it sitting empty for 7 months because you haven't quite decided on your allocation yet. Meanwhile, the person who understood about 40% of what you understand opened a simple index fund 2 years ago and has been quietly building wealth ever since. Not because their strategy was better, because they started. This is painful to hear if you're someone who values doing things right. But in personal finance, done is almost always better than perfect. A basic investment strategy executed consistently for 10 years will outperform a perfect strategy that never quite gets started. The math is ruthless on this point. There's also something worth naming here that doesn't get talked about enough in personal finance spaces. Smart people often have a complicated relationship with money that has nothing to do with math. If you grew up watching your parents stress about money, some part of you may have absorbed the belief that financial struggle is just what responsible, hardworking people experience. That wealth is for people who got lucky or cut corners or didn't have your values. That caring too much about money is somehow shallow. These beliefs run deep, they're rarely examined, and they quietly sabotage every technically correct financial decision you try to make. You can know exactly what to do and still not do it. If somewhere underneath the logic, a part of you doesn't actually believe you're the kind of person who builds wealth. That's not a financial problem. That's an identity problem. And no budget spreadsheet is going to fix it. The shift happens when you stop seeing wealth building as something you do and start seeing it as something you are. When saving isn't a sacrifice you make reluctantly, but a reflection of how you actually see your future. When investing isn't a complicated technical task to get right, but a simple habit that runs in the background of your life whether you're paying attention or not. That shift doesn't require more intelligence. It doesn't require a higher salary. It doesn't require waiting until you have the perfect plan. It requires actually deciding, that the future version of you matters more than the current version of your lifestyle. Look, being smart is not the problem. Being smart without financial self-awareness is the problem. And the gap between those two things is exactly where most high earners spend their entire lives, making good money, living well, and quietly wondering why the numbers never seem to add up. You already have everything you need to change this. The only question is whether you're going to keep using your intelligence to justify where you are, or start using it to build somewhere better. Your future self is already waiting. The decision is yours right now.